Welcome to Hort Culture, where a group of extension professionals and plant people talk about the business, production, and joy of planting seeds and helping them grow. Join us as we explore the culture of horticulture. Hello, everybody. Welcome. It's Hort Culture in the afternoon, and we're here just laughing it up and giggling behind the scenes. How's everybody feeling today? Besides giggly.
Oh,
Other than
happy,
giggly.
hungry.
We're kind of laughing not to cry, I feel is how I'm
It's a
moving
really
through the
busy
day.
time for plant lovers now, isn't it? I mean, there's a lot going on in the plant world. There is.
I feel like the line between I was going to say genius and insanity, so I'll go with that. The line between genius and insanity is very thin and thinning every day for me. So
It's springtime, so it's burning the candle at both ends, essentially. Is what we're doing.
a matter
Nuclear
of perspective.
explosion in the future.
but that's not what you came here to hear about. You came here.
Are you sure?
Not you. You may have come here to hear about that, but I certainly didn't. No, we have fun. So this is a little bit different kind of. It's actually really great timing because I think we're all in a little bit of goofy, but also maybe stressed and tired and different sorts of moods. Maybe you find yourself in that sort of scenario currently. And so it seems like a good opportunity for us to think a little bit about this. This is less topical, less, we talked to Jonathan Larson last week. What a cool guy. Can I just say?
You can.
He is. He really
I
is.
echo.
The
Incredible.
dopest.
Man, so cool. We talked to him about IPM.
I hope you're listening, Jonathan.
This week's a little more discussion based and thinking about, as someone who works on the marketing side of things, and I'm housed in the Department of Agricultural Economics. It's really easy for me, and you've probably heard it on the podcast. It's easy for me to be a buzzkill about something not being profitable, or not wanting to go into something expecting to make money because that might not be the best avenue to take. That all those types of very mercenary and tactical decisions around money making. And the reality is, for the most part, people that I come across, the money is often an afterthought, or it's something that they think that they need to think about. But the initial spark, and if you're a home gardener and you aren't trying to sell, or somebody is not trying to sell, you just get to savor that spark indefinitely, is about what is it about this world of horticulture, this world of growing plants and interacting with them that we love. What is the reason why we love it? Or what are the good things about it that have nothing to do with making money, has nothing to do with maximizing productivity or any of that kind of fun stuff. And I think for people who spend a lot of their time in very utilitarian fields, us in extension, it's good to kind of reflect back on that, especially if you're feeling a little down, feeling a little tired. And so that's the setup for today. And I'm talking a lot here just to kind of frame it for everybody, but what do you all think? Did you all have a chance to think about that a little bit before this and share some of your thoughts? It could be you personally. It could be people that you've come across over time. What's the point of it all, Ray?
Well, I have my own personal reasons, but it's interesting that I work with a lot of people, and you said that work in different fields and their jobs. At a certain point in their life, they come to do activities like gardening, where they may have been gardeners when they were younger, or they may have never been a gardener. But work with people all the time that kind of they frame it as getting back to the land. And it's just really interesting to me that that this is sort of a phenomenon. Yeah, it's a real thing. Yeah, absolutely a real thing.
So there's elements of like nostalgia and a calling back to some sort of connection with the land and with.
Yeah, 100%. And for me, I guess even I'm experiencing a little bit of that because, grew up on a farm. We had, animals and plants on the farm, cattle and tobacco fruits.
Where was that?
Eastern part of the state, the eastern foothills, kind of very hilly region. So we had these little plots.
Can you be specific?
Yeah, just outside of Paintsville in Johnson County. So the far eastern part of the state. But we had all these activities going on, and the days were hot and long, and we spent a lot of hours in the tobacco stripping room or in the field chopping out weeds. At the time, that was a thing back then. Did a lot of manual weed control. But I said, someday I'm just going to go to school, and I'm going to do something different. Going to try
Mm.
to go to college and do something different. And I got to college and had this reflective period where I was like, but do I really want to go away from that? Because I realized that I loved it, more than I thought.
Mm.
And I've given that a lot of thought over time. And one thing that I really missed as soon as I got away from, producing things like a tomato crop or, a crop of sweet corn, was that it's kind of a really it's this is getting deep into the weeds on the topic, no pun intended,
Yeah,
but
the weeds you haven't chopped yet.
Weed,
yeah, the weeds we haven't
weed
chopped yet.
away,
That
weed
my
away.
dad would say, "Go do that if you are bored, son. Go do that." Long days, remember, long days. But there's this whole thing of seasonality and connecting me
Mm.
not only to the land but to the seasons, and that has just came back to me over time and only gotten stronger.
Mm.
Because when we were doing that, not only were we doing that as a family activity together, that was the motto of our farm, as we kind of did that almost everything together as a family, but there was also this really close tie. And I remember in the fall, the smells and the hay that would go in the barn, and around Halloween time, what the farm looked like. And this dad would always make us, kids a fodder shock. And I remember all of that, and just growing plants and being a part of that process connected me so closely to the land and seasons that feeling has come back 200% for me. And I think that's one of the reasons I still have like a little garden plot out back. And not only do we deal with these things professionally, but it's different. I want to do it personally now.
Mm.
I still want to
Mm.
go back and do that. I want to see that tomato is going to mark time for me. It's
Wow.
going to grow and get larger in a blink of an eye. I turn around and I get it, and that's easy to forget. Even in our jobs, we're looking at things every single day, but it's easy to forget how quickly time passes unless you have a marker for time.
Mm.
That's why I grow a garden in the back. Yes, I love fresh produce, and there's many, many other great reasons, but it's connectivity for me, and it's a marker of time.
Mm.
There's lots of other things that mark time, but that's a big one for me, and that's really abstract. But I've thought a lot about it over time. Yeah, that's one
Wow.
of the reasons that I do that.
What a
Beautiful.
fantastic answer.
I
Yeah.
just, I just thought I would go deep into the weeds and set
That
the
is
tone,
so no,
Brad.
that is so good. There's a lot of that I've felt.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But it's hard. It was hard for me when I was younger, and I was about a sophomore in college and trying to make up my mind whether I was going into biology or agricultural sciences. And there's some weird shift started happening in me that said, those were really hard times, but they were good times. They were really
Mm.
good
Mm.
times. So
Mm.
yeah, for me, that's one of the reasons I've stayed close to my roots, so to say,
Mm.
is I love that marking and connectivity, marking of time. So yeah.
What about you, Josh?
Uh, yeah, that's interesting. His answer made me think a lot. But I would have to say, I mean, I sort of had a different path to agriculture. I was a late comer, a late bloomer, if you will. I grew
You
up in
bloomed
a
late.
very
Nice.
urbanized suburban area of Orlando and worked in information technology, right? Like call center sort of work, just regimented cubicles, concrete, asphalt, every direction. And ended up around the age of 27 to go and work on a 12-acre kind of mixed fruit and vegetable farm in South Georgia, which is very warm compared to Kentucky, but compared to Florida, it wasn't so bad. Um, and, one of the things that drew me to it was I had a friend that had gotten into it maybe about 6 months prior, and we were talking about kind of the stress that you get in that kind of work is very much physical and outdoor farm work. And I was coming from an environment that was very sedentary, but was very kind of just a constant putting out of fires that I didn't start, very abstracted. You solve one problem,
Shout
you're
out
on the
Billy Joel.
next. Yeah,
You didn't start the
exactly. There you
fire.
go. And it just keeps burning, even without me there. Um,
Mm.
but
No one got me.
after getting onto a farm, which my parents thought this was nuts. I had dropped out of school to go into information technology, which at least made sense because there's money in it theoretically. But then had switched to becoming like kind of a seasonal farm worker and making, kind of close to or sub minimum wage, depending on the circumstances, without health benefits. So they were like, our child has lost his mind, I guess, was the thinking. Whereas
Thoughts and
their
prayers for
parents
our
had
son.
grown up on
Good boy.
farms and they all found it very relatable what I was doing.
Mm.
Like suddenly I was in with all the grandparents. It was just their kids who thought I was nuts.
Did you start to have like closeness and conversation with a totally different group of people at some point?
Oh,
And
absolutely.
relatability? Yeah,
Yeah, it's
that's
like we could sit
awesome.
around and
That's
like talk
awesome.
about the weather like in depth.
Nice.
and
Yeah.
be very emotionally invested in
Yes.
conversations about the weather.
Passionate conversations. Yeah,
Right, right.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'd have to say one of the things that has kept me wanting to always be around it and wanting to kind of keep my foot inside that world and to eventually kind of retire into a lifestyle that's more surrounded by agriculture and plants is kind of the mental and physical health benefits, right? There's like, I remember trying to describe it to somebody that like working on the farm, I mean, there's stress to it and there's a physical stress to it, but your body can adapt to that. Whereas like the adaptations you make for like mental health stuff aren't always productive, right? In our personal relationships. And how I would describe it in those days was that like this work is like negative stress. Like I would go out into the field with, all the issues that somebody might have and just be anxious about anything, but, spend 5, 6, 7, 8 hours in the sun. Suddenly a lot of those things aren't really bothering you anymore. You're worried about like, oh, let me get some cold water to drink and I can take a nap at the drop of a hat.
Nice.
Gosh, I think my coping mechanisms are working out just fine. Okay, so
Yeah, yeah.
my mental health
You
coping
got it
mechanisms are
under
great.
control.
Yeah,
Brett
totally.
is very caffeinated, in case anybody was wondering.
Right.
Yes.
So
Would you
yeah.
say that, Josh, it seems like I heard you say, like, you could also see kind of like the results of your efforts.
Oh,
Was that
absolutely.
part of
Yeah.
it? I'm always
Yeah.
curious about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because if you're just putting out a series of like fires or dealing with abstract problems all day, it's hard at the end of the day to say, like, what did I even do? Right?
Mm,
Like, I kept
mm,
some institution rolling forward, maybe in some small way. Whereas, like, spending all day out in a field, you can look back and say, hey, there's no weeds over there anymore. Or, like, all that's picked and in the
mhm.
fridge, or, whatever. You're actively doing it and you can see the accomplishments that you're performing throughout the day. You're less alienated from it.
I think that might be part of the reason why people gravitate toward the production and hate talking about the marketing, is because the marketing
Totally.
That's
falls
a great,
into that
great point. That's a great
abstraction
point.
category.
Right.
Yeah.
So just
Yeah.
everybody know, I understand why you don't want to talk about record keeping and marketing.
He's looking
And
you up right now, targeting.
but
Right, right.
yeah, Alexis, what about you? You've spent some time in the fields
A few.
recently,
Today.
and
Yeah, short, just a little while ago. Um, yeah, I think, I mean, could say exactly the same thing that Josh and Ray both said. I think for me, progress and efficiency are my love languages.
Mm.
Um, so
I need to
I
read that
am who I
book.
am. So I enjoy stepping away, like Josh said, from sort of those abstract things, those fires that we did not start, and actually accomplishing something and seeing it, and then seeing the fruits of my labor is
Hmm.
really nice. And when I'm harvesting it and getting to sell it, and I mean, yeah, I know that comes back to money making, but just looking out in the field and seeing that I have color this time of year that I might not have had another time of year, and just seeing the progress that I've made, not only in a week or a day or an hour, but also over the years. And sometimes I don't remember that. And I had to have that moment with myself this morning where I was like,
Mm.
hey, yes, you're stressed out because you're trying to do a lot of things right now, but look at where you've come, and this is what you dreamed of. And so, you've accomplished that. And so I haven't dreamed of being super stressed, but uh, I have dreamed of being able to do the things that I'm currently doing now. And that's That's good, and it's something that as I like walk back into the house with really sore muscles, and I'm
Hmm.
sweaty, I can remember that I've come really far. So I feel like that's one of the things that is why I grow and continue to sweat and
Hmm.
continue to be stressed, I guess.
Well, so what if we step away from just the like there's cut flowers in the business and the farm stuff, because you're an OG plant lover from a day oneer, if you will. Uh,
Oh
like
yeah. So
what drew you in the first place? Because
why do I have a Hort
I met
degree?
Alexis when she would have been still a student, and I was working at UK, and she and her friends were turning the horticulture club into something truly spectacular and doing some really cool things and propagating stuff and flexing about difficult propagations. And I was like, I don't know what that means, but congratulations. So what about that? Like, if you step back to that time, what do you think is that spark, that initial spark?
Yeah. So why I have a Hort degree, I guess. Yeah, my parents also thought I was like, and I grew up with gardens and, farms, and my mom is really great. She knew Latin names of plants. So I just, could go around, and that was very normal. For me, but it was never something I thought I could make a career out of. So I actually started when I got out of college. I went to a military academy and was going to be a civil engineer. And then I was like, oh, right, I don't really like to be on the ocean. And I also don't really love
Have
math.
trouble being
Uh,
civil?
so,
Right.
so
Not civilized.
yeah. So I spent a summer. So I left school and was applying to other colleges, left the academy and was applying to other colleges, and spent my summer working at Lowe's in the lawn and garden section, just moving
Oh.
plants around, answering questions.
Taking
And
leaf cuttings,
I
propagating
was,
in your pocket.
I mean,
Avoiding
what
the
falls
plant
on the
police.
ground
Yeah.
is what's on the ground. So, I was like 18, and I had a plant. The guy who ran that part of the Lowe's actually was had a lot of background in plants and ran commercial nurseries for years and years and years. So he was very educated and kind of clued me in that I could have a career working with plants and something that, other than being like a landscaper. That's what my parents said. My mom was like, "What are you going to do? Go be a landscaper?" I was like, "No."
Could
I
be
was at the,
sweet. There's a bunch of landscapers
I
making more
mean,
money
which
than
is
me right
fine. Like
now.
I
landscaping
enjoyed
is
That's
great.
landscaping.
true.
I was doing that before extension. Made a lot of money.
Oh, but you
Yeah,
got,
same.
if you're a
Yeah.
parent, you got to kind of
Yeah.
try to scare the
Right,
bejesus out of
right.
your kids,
How are you going to
Reality
support
check.
me in
Yeah.
my old age?
Yeah, to them it was kind of like I was going to like art school, not that there's anything wrong with art school either, but
Mm.
there's that like,
Yeah.
thought to it. So anyway, so
Oh
I
yeah.
started in horticulture, started to learn all of the ways that I could be involved with plants, and was very lucky to have someone who taught me a lot of great hands-on skills. Sherry, shout out to you.
Shout out Cherry.
And just, yeah, I think plants focus me, like I can sit
Hmm.
down with some cuttings or some seeds or whatever it is, some weeds, some, plantings in the ground. It doesn't matter where, but it's a task that I can focus on, and all the other anxieties, just kind of go, because I have a purpose, and I can see my progress instantly. And there's just something else to think about. I may put on a good podcast and just
Mm.
kind of zone out,
So a
and that's
different
just
podcast
really,
from this one then.
No,
I
definitely
mean,
this
there's
podcast. She's
other
You
listening
podcasts.
said a
to.
good one, Ray.
Definitely,
No.
Oh, okay. My good.
definitely.
Qualifications aside.
Humility.
But
It seems like that's
yeah,
a
so
theme with you guys,
mhm.
yeah. As far as the garden therapy, I mean, you and Josh make like you're doing things that you can kind of see and very
Mhm.
tactile, kind of result, kind of driven sort of things.
It gives
As
you
far as
the
Yeah,
perception of purpose. Like, my life has
yeah,
meaning because that thing happened over there and I did it.
it's so cool. I mean,
yeah,
it's really
yeah.
that's very real. It feels very real.
I
It
remember
gives me
being
a
in
sense of
undergrad.
like no. Go
I
ahead.
was going to say, I remember being in undergrad with Alexis and her also talking
She
about
tried to cut
liking
you off. She's like,
plants.
"Shh, no,
Yeah. Her talking about
don't talk about it."
liking working with plants also because they don't really talk back, do they? They're easy to work with.
Yeah,
I
they're
would
not
agree
even
with
like
that as well.
animal
They're
Took a
nice
U-turn.
and
driven.
quiet.
If you listen hard
Yeah.
enough, they communicate.
Stinging nettle definitely talks back. I'm here to tell you, there's plants that
I
talk back
talk
more
back to
than
stinging
others.
nettle too. Yeah.
Yes, well,
Poison
Yeah,
very
ivy.
exactly.
cool. That
Who
sounds
can
like a
talk
mafia
louder?
hit to me, guys. Brett, we don't want to miss you, Brett. You've not
Oh,
added in,
yeah.
but
I,
yeah,
well,
we
I,
definitely want to hear.
I will share some of that here in a little bit. But I was thinking
Yeah.
about just reflecting on what you were saying about the sometimes that term therapeutic gets thrown around as sort of anything that's enjoyable or whatever. But I think in this sense, we've had a number of partners and folks that we've seen where whether that be refugees who are coming out of a really troubling place, and they're able to come and find a space, whether in a community garden or through a refugee garden program like they've done in Louisville, or something like a really traumatic event like the folks at Greenhouse 18 that have dealt with that kind of stuff, that these horticultural engagements, just engaging with plants, having something that grows, having something that is both within and outside of your control, does actually have extensive positive effects on our mental health and managing and working through, of course, in tandem with all the other types of support that folks working through trauma need. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that is, again, it's something that if you lump it in with the kind of stereotypical wine mom Instagram therapy meaning, it can get lost. And I know that's not what we're talking about here, but I think that is just a really important part of that. It's not just necessarily a distraction, but there's something really fundamental there that I'm sure that there's been explorations of that.
There's some cool research on that, Brett. And I worked with an Alzheimer's unit years ago, and they came to me with this concept, and I was like, "Well, I'm going to have to see the scientific
Mm,
underpinnings to see if we can build something from this." And there, lo and behold, there was using textures of plants and colors, and not only that, but smell, but engaging the different senses as much as possible. There's pretty decent research on this, and from a true therapeutic standpoint, bringing science into that and quantifying that and the way that it engages your senses in ways that we're just beginning to understand because it engages so many senses at one time.
mm,
The colors, the shapes, the smells, the feel, it does
Mm-hmm.
it all at one time if you put that into the design of a garden. And we're currently working with it's a little bit different focus, but a local community gardens. I won't name any names, but it involves a multitude of residents with some different issues, but we kind of incorporate some of those, you know, science based concepts into the garden. So yeah, there's a lot to that in a pure terminology standpoint.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Therapeutic. Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, there's some good research out there on that.
I think I shouted them out as Greenhouse 18. It's Greenhouse 17. I
Oh yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
okay,
promoted them
right.
for some reason. But yeah, a lot of friends who have worked with that organization, and yeah, really cool stuff that they're up to. But I think for my general answer is a little different maybe from what you all have said. So I didn't grow up with an ag background at all. Had an aunt who had a pretty extensive garden, and I did a garden at my grandma's house when I was a kid, somewhat, but it was just a little thing to keep the kids or keep me
Busy.
occupied. And
but you remembered it.
Keep Brett
I do remember
occupied.
it,
You
yeah.
remembered it though.
And then I went away from all that for a while. And my background, I went to college, and when I came into college, I studied Spanish and German and sociology, and that's what I got my degrees in. And then after that was all done, I decided to go and get a job, which to that point I didn't. I had jobs here and there, but as far as a full time job, and that happened to be at the horticulture research farm at UK, growing some vegetables and that kind of thing, and eventually transitioned away from that into doing more extension work, and we were doing some I guess because I missed that small scale horticulture production, we basically set up a little mini horticulture farm with long rows and drip tape and everything else in our backyard. And spoiler alert, it's a lot of work and can turn something that's supposed to be fun into something that's stressful. And so we recently, as in last year, decided to kind of go in a completely different direction. We had Annie, my wife, had been moving that way already, but decided to move things into more of a landscaped, uh, designed space built around plants, but also some hardscaping and other stuff like that. And that has accompanied or has gone hand in hand with developing interest in things like bonsai and a little bit broader interest in, I would say, non-edible horticultural experiences. And so I think now my relationship is much more about embracing the lack of control, or the embracing the limits of my control on that you can intervene and you can do certain things and it may produce the result that you're after. But a lot of it is this, people describe bonsai as a collaborative art form, in the sense of a collaboration between you and the plant. And I think of that in general as, you mentioned seasonality, Ray. I think seasonality, weather in general, but seasonality in particular, is one of those like foundations of the lack of human control. Like
Hmm.
the
Good
crushing
point.
winter is on its way,
It's going to be what it's going to be.
and the hot summer is coming, and like this is the thing that we react to. And so a lot of my interactions with horticulture, relationship to horticulture, and I think horticulture as a field is about this dance between humans and plants, trying to get them that they want what we want, get them to do what we want them to do, them pushing back, or going along with it. And so I think I was talking with Annie about this, and I think that when people spend time in the space, or they see a plant that you've worked with and it makes them happy or moves them or otherwise, that's another part of it for me. But that's kind of my very heady answer to that question, I think.
That's very interesting. My dad, who is more of a poet than I ever would have thought when I was younger, he would say that agriculture and doing field work and working with plants and even animals to a certain extent is one of the few endeavors in life where the longer you do it, the more you realize the less you know.
Mm.
And he was speaking to all those external factors. We talk about like planning programs and, doing impact statements and all this. And there's a little slot on the logic model that says external factors. Well, I feel like all of agriculture and exactly what you just said, Brett, has so much to do with external factors. But, I think a lot of my dad would say something very similar. He probably 100% agree with some of the things you said. One of the things he loved about it, he said it's always going to be a challenge. There's
Mm-hmm.
always going to be things outside of your control. You do the best you can, and that's all you can do. Yeah, that's a
I
cool way to
think,
look at it.
Do you
Yeah.
yeah, I
all?
think.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, as someone who is self-identifies and as a control freak, um,
Mm.
I think that
You're talking about
everybody's
me or
laughing
you?
because they know it. uh, that I think is one of the things that is teaching me to let go is plants and nature. I mean, there's like an element of control, of course, that I have, and as I stare at weeds, I'm kind of like, I have the ability to get rid of these, but there's just some things that I cannot control, and I think that that is almost a relief.
Mm.
It's like the
Yeah.
ability to let go and being forced to let go, and it slowly, I think, as I age and the more I farm, uh teaching me
Mm.
that that's okay and I can adapt that to other areas of my life. And so that has been, it's been a good, Mother Nature is the best teacher.
You're reminding me of something Jonathan was talking about last week. He was talking about toward the end. He was talking about those distinctions between control, management, and suppression.
Uh-huh.
And it reminded me of like control is like perfection, and then the middle one, management, is sort of like what you believe is your optimal thing that you can achieve, and then suppression is like doing the best we can.
Hmm.
Kind of a similar thing. Like your whole field is not overgrown with weeds. You're generally heading in the direction of suppression in that, but that sometimes there's going to be ones that grow, and we're just kind of walking hand in hand with this land and with this place and with this field, and um, doing the best we can. And I'm glad to hear that Mother Nature's teaching you a little patience, Alexis, because you're an amazing person,
Hmm.
and you are too hard on
Thank
yourself
you.
sometimes, often. all the time.
Nature's the only one she's going to
I mean,
listen to.
Yeah, that's true. Nature's
Nature
the only one that
nurture.
can make her listen.
Nature doesn't nurture; she punishes.
I
Poor
am punished
Alexis.
regularly by Mother Earth.
Mother Earth
I
punishers.
think, I
Great.
mean, if humility is a muscle, Mother Nature will work that muscle sometimes to the
Mm,
point to where it's too strong. In other words, I think it's just a humbling experience. Sometimes when you think you have a handle on things, you develop this mechanism when you're a producer. It seems like producing things. Whether a home gardeners know this, doesn't matter the scale of production, but it strengthens that muscle in you of humility and being adaptable, I think, and
Hmm.
develops that because someone said excellence is not a act, it's a habit. It's a
mm,
habit rather. Well, that's kind of like humility and being able to roll with the punches. That creates that muscle in you. Mother
mm,
Nature does, and working with the elements and working outside and working with plants that should live but they die and pests that should not destroy your crops but they do. And now that's not a good thing. I don't know. I'm not a real strong subscriber to the philosophy of what doesn't
doesn't
kill
kill
you
you.
makes you
Yeah.
Feel you
stronger. Yeah.
make you
Yeah.
stronger.
What doesn't kill me is, a good thing.
Just
But yeah, it's kind
traumatizes
of
me.
that thing. It's
Yeah.
kind of that thing. Yeah. It is. It's a harsh master sometimes. But yeah, you develop this certain attitude. And I've known some older producers and they've got such a chill attitude when it seems like the world's burning down around them as far as their production operations and stuff. But they're like, well, we've done the best we can. We're not always in control, and
Hmm.
that's a hard place to get to, I believe, in my mind, because I am sort of a control freak, and I love
Mm.
managing and manipulating systems and making them do what I want. But it doesn't always work like that, does it? Does it, Alexis? She's like, why did you have to swing back to me? Yeah,
Doesn't always work that way, does it, Alexis?
pointed comment. Yeah, yeah. I'm glad we don't have a video. I'm like, yeah. I wanted
I'm
a
not
different.
crying. It's fine.
Yeah, it's like she's like,
She's
please change the
happy
subject.
tears.
I know
Uh,
we're not talking about economics today, but another angle of this is somebody said one time, and it could have been my father. He was always saying something because we had to chop weeds together and long
he
rows
was
of
always saying
tobacco.
He's
something.
always saying
He
something.
was always, and that's a great thing about it is togetherness until it's not a great thing, and you're like, I'm sick of you people. But he said something really interesting that it probably appeals to you economists in the room here and on the podcast, Brett. But he said that, and this really kind of shocked me. I was like, he said, well, why do you think we do all this one day? And I was like, I don't know, to make money, Dad. We need the money. We never had a lot of economic resources. He said, that's the reason we do it. It's not why I do it. And I was like, what are you talking about? He said, one of the cool things about working with plants is, he said, so much of the world is about adding on wealth to a certain product or moving wealth in the world from point A to point B. But he said when you involve yourself in producing plants, he said you're not moving wealth from point A to point B. You're creating it. You're a steward of that. I'm like, my dad hits me with these things. We're out chopping tobacco. I'm 14 years old. I'm like, okay. But, yeah, I'm thinking about it still years later, trying to digest that comment. But yeah, stuff like that. I mean, when you really think about all these reasons, all of our experiences, it's really neat hearing from you guys.
Well, I think
Uh,
that idea it's something that Annie brought up in a slightly different context, but the
mm,
notion of stewardship or the notion of connecting with a place or with a piece of land or with soil or with however you frame it linguistically, this idea of a lot of stuff happens because this star a perfect distance away from the earth interacts with these little crazy creatures that happen to really like growing in the mineral and life mixture we call soil to produce their own sugars that we eventually eat and otherwise take advantage of. Like that is a pretty crazy and existential piece of like our relationship to even being alive. And
Right.
so the idea that, I mean, it should run through, it does run through, I think, most of our, spiritual and religious traditions and other, like, there's something very, very deep and profound there. And so the idea that, like, it is, it's not magical in the sense that we don't understand it, but the idea that, yeah, you're going to take care of this land, you're going to put this little hard rock like thing in the ground. And then, like, in a couple of weeks, there's going to be green stuff sprouting out of the ground. is insane. Like it's a really wild part of being a human being that
You can know all the science and it's still miraculous
it's
every single
incredible,
time. Yeah,
incredible. I've
yeah.
been germinating a lot of seeds and a lot of different stratification and other things. Again, Alexis and I kind of nerded out on it quite a bit, but
Weep, weep.
it's still just like it's a captivating experience. And I think that idea of having this relationship with the land and having long-term relationships with the land, either as communities or as people, it's another part for me of what I find so captivating about this stuff. Is
And
Mhm.
it perpetuates itself, this love of, or this connectivity of people, even folks that I talk to that are maybe they're retiring, moving to the country. Um, they may have had these experiences in the past, but they're wanting, there's this, I don't know, this feeling of reconnecting. I mean, my own feeling's a little bit different. I have a 9-year old, and at one point I thought, I don't, I want him to see, have some of these experiences, because they are sort of profound to me and transformative. But that's another reason I do it, is I kind of, it seems like it's a special experience for me, and I kind of want to pass it on. But even people that have never had these experiences when they were younger, I often wonder what brings them back. They can't explain it to me or verbalize it either. Sometimes they're just like, well, it's just something we feel, we want to be a part of something we can see, and be,
Right.
do. So it's
mm,
Yeah.
interesting. It's interesting.
There's something I mean, as Brett was kind of talking about this, and you had mentioned there's something sort of universal about it. And I remember
Hmm.
I traveled in undergrad to do like a study abroad in southern Japan, which is like a culture that I'm not super filled in on. I don't speak really any Japanese. I definitely am not literate in like kanji and stuff. But in my time there working on this farm, the easiest part about it, the easiest way to like generate relationships with my coworkers, because I was the only non-native person there. Well, there was a guy from Nepal, but like me, a guy from Nepal, and a bunch of Japanese nationals, was like doing the work of working in the garden and doing farm work, because it's so similar, across very wide cultural gaps. The problems and obstacles are all the same, and people think about them sort of in similar ways and do that work. And it was very gratifying and exciting to kind of have that entryway into this very different culture. Whereas, like, going to the grocery store was completely alienating and confusing. I didn't know what was going on. But when I was on the farm, I knew what needed to be done. I knew what to look for, didn't really require much direction. And we could
to
communicate
uh
much easier.
to paraphrase a Mean Girls quote, plants are the same in every language.
Indeed.
well, and one
It's
thing I
the
will.
quote is sorry, go
No, you're
ahead.
good.
I'm taking this like very sentimental thing to a weird place of
That's
awkwardness
cool.
of Mean Girl quotes.
I
Make it
like it.
awkward. Make it awkward.
Keep it weird,
They say math is the same in every language, and they're like, that's beautiful, but for us it's plants, and the
Yeah.
Latin name is the Latin name no matter where you go. Like I had a similar experience with Josh, like studying abroad, and in Indonesia, like we didn't necessarily call the plants the same thing, but if you could spit out the Latin, and I was with a bunch of plant people, and I knew what
Mm-hmm.
plant that was because they were like, oh, that's a capsaicin. I was like, oh, it's in the pepper family, right? So it was that was such a cool moment for me when we could talk about plants um, in broken English and kind of know what each other was talking about because we had the Latin, and I thought that was super cool.
Yeah.
And just very briefly, we're in the touchy feely side. So my sociologist comes out and just to say that when I say, talk about the universality, I do understand there are people and cultures whose experience more recently has been one where agriculture was a representation of their inferior status. I'm thinking about
Mm.
particularly African slaves and the chattel slavery system that is not the universal that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about something a little bit more broad, and I can understand that not everybody's champing at the bit to get back into the soil for a number of reasons. But I think in general, as we look across cultural context, there does seem to be some shared pieces there. A couple more like nuts and bolts components of why I think I like interacting with plants and interact with them in the ways that I do is I used to say that we used our garden, or that our garden was designed to provide food for us and for the things that come and live here. And so
Mhm.
things like pollinator habitat, lots of cover for birds, bird baths, water, that sort of thing. And as I've gotten older, I guess, I don't know if it's older, maybe just the passage of time. I don't know that I'm getting any more mature, as you could probably tell. But with the passage of time, I'm just realizing how much more important that is to me, because the reality is a lot of our land development that we have done across time and continue to do and expand at a rapid pace is just decimating wildlife habitat. And I
Mm.
don't know that the solution to intervening on that is to just have a backyard garden or a monarch way station. But I think on a more like uh, maybe spiritual or personal or philosophical level, doing that, it does feel like a little bit of a gesture to the
Yeah.
animals and creatures that we live around. And I don't know. I see a lot of. I've never seen so many different types of bees and wasps, and in just a little backyard, little suburban yard. But I don't know if you all think about that explicitly about interacting with the birds, and I maybe sit and look at the birds and plants more than you all do. I don't know. Maybe.
No, I mean, just being around plants, it doesn't matter if it's in my backyard or that's one of the reasons I get into the forest. I have the same
Mm,
love for a tree as I do a tomato plant. One thing that's always been a part of my family, from going way back, and I still do. And during this conversation, I kind of realized, some of the, you said sociology, but building community. But it's one of the angles that I guess, we didn't have a lot of resources growing up, but my father gave away more food than anybody I can ever think of. He would give away like excess, beans, tomatoes, all of this stuff to the community. And to this very day, what I grow in the backyard, it's more than we can put up, and we only have so much freezer space. But give away to the community. And Reed's got this little wagon. He literally goes down the street and he's got a bunch of neighbors. We know that they are not so lucky to have, plots around their homes that's suitable. But yeah, this whole idea of even plants as a builder of community and connectivity, it's so many angles and so many ways you could look at this. It's pretty amazing. And it's making me think of all these things on this kind of, conversation we're having today. Yeah.
we were somewhat recently just on that community aspect. I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because I think that it's multifaceted, in the sense that yes, there's the sharing directly of stuff with community, but also like gathering and talking and sharing information about that stuff. You all work with master gardeners and just
Yes.
the communities in general. But one that I didn't, just kind of, I don't know. I guess it's more common maybe for you all, you who are spend more time in the horticultural, the hort culture, if you will, because a lot of my time is spent more in the economics and campus and all that kind of thing. I didn't grow up or come up with propagating stuff, but my wife and I recently went to this community gardener club thing. They were having this plant sale, which happens a lot all over the place, but almost everything there was divided off of things that the people in the club had in their yard. The hostas and the peace lilies and the everything, all the other components, the irises. Either they started it or they divided it to create that plant that was then sold. And I think that the benefit, goes back to the club or goes to I don't know, somewhere. But in addition to the fact that there were a lot of people of a advanced age with a lot of animosity in their hearts, throwing elbows to get to the best lilies and get to the best available plant stock. The mood was electric, and despite that, it was just this really beautiful moment of, and you talk about that kind of subdivision and that the one plant gives life to another plant that then's going to go and have a life in my backyard, and in the future maybe that'll happen. I'll divide it and give it to somebody else, and that's a whole component of the community thing that I hadn't really I hadn't considered or valued it as much as maybe I could have at a different point in time.
Jennifer brought me this lily that's been in her family for like 5 generations.
Oh
Like
my
back
gosh.
Wow.
they've all got a piece of it, but she said no pressure. But if you kill this, you're dead to my family. And I'm like, I'm in the process of dividing this thing now. I'm like, it has like kind of like mealybugs. I'm like, oh my goodness. This thing is,
Oh
but yeah, Brett, it
no.
kind of goes with what you're saying. That's a part of their history, and it's this
Yeah.
plant that they all and they divided it up so that no one person would kill that legacy of this plant, but it's tied to their family in some small piece, but kind of what you're saying, Brett. Yeah, it can be a kind of a part of you. Yeah.
Plants.
You guys,
Alexis, are you still with us?
I am. I'm just soaking in all of this
Connectivity
good
issues aside, Alexis had a few
emotional
issues today.
emotional stuff.
I know
Soaking it all
sometimes you
in.
don't have the best reaction to emotions, Alexis. I'm not throwing rocks or anything, but
I'm very
you
good
know,
at the emotion anger. I don't know what you're talking about.
yeah, it's just
Totally.
not all of them.
emo is not an emotion; it's a social movement, Alexis. I've told you this
if
before.
if anybody has oh, what is the name of that movie where they have the little
Terminator.
emotions or like
Oh,
little characters? You know what I'm talking
Terminator.
about? And there's one called
yeah.
Yes,
Snow
the
White and the
little
Seven
emotions.
Dwarfs.
No, that's another movie. Uh,
Happy, sleepy.
Yes, I am grumpy. No, there's one and he's like anger is an emotion where he like blows his top off all the time. That's how
yes,
Oh
I
yeah,
feel
Oh,
yeah.
sometimes.
Inside something.
inside.
Inside
That's
Out,
it.
Inside Out.
Yeah,
Ins-
that's
Yeah.
it.
it's
Yeah.
inside out. Yeah.
Uh
Which emotion are
please
you,
Pixar, do
Alexis?
not sue us. I most of the time I'm anger.
well, you make me.
But
Which is
You
why
make my emotion happy.
mhm.
oh goodness. I do. I love sharing plants and I love like we've said 100 times in here, I'm growing flowers and like I just got to drop off two vases of flowers to some friends and that was just a good moment, just for no reason whatsoever other than I know they enjoy it and it makes them
A
happy,
lot
so
of
I brought them
reasons.
flowers.
Yeah, and you
Well,
made that. It's not like you put it together, but you made
yeah, I
that.
mean those,
The
I started
soil
them
and the
from
sun and
seed
all these
or
other
right,
concepts.
right.
Yeah,
They're
you made that.
it's a labor of love. I actually that's what I give as Christmas gifts to my staff and I always say I hope that they understand that this is giving a piece of me. I give them 2 weeks of flowers. I bring them in a week of like a CSA, mini CSA essentially, and for the staff in the Boyle
The folks
County
at the
office.
extension office. Is that what you're
Yeah,
talking?
the folks at the
Yeah.
extension office for Christmas, I give them flowers, and I
Oh, that's so
just,
nice.
yeah, it's probably more about me than it is
Poison
about
ivy to the
them,
ones
but
she doesn't like.
I
I don't know.
I feel like I'm giving them, a piece of me, right? So,
Yeah,
I have come. I mean, I think I always kind of liked cut flowers, but I have come around to it so much in the last few years, and just like the effect of like beautiful but ephemeral.
mhm.
It's there's something, yeah, again, I
Appreciate
there's
it
something about
now.
that is really moving. It's really emotionally moving, and I think I've shied away in the past from thinking like hungry or not hungry. That's pretty clear, but like fulfilled and like whatever it is, that feeling I get when I see the beautiful flowers like that you've grown or that Annie's grown in a vase, and like,
Yeah.
man, there's just something
We
really
say
valuable about that.
we say in the flower farmer world that tomatoes are food for, you nutrition wise for your body, but flowers are food for the soul.
Mhm.
And
Hmm.
so
Sure.
that's how we market them, at least. That's our marketing technique. Brett,
The
how do you feel about that?
the workers organizations of the world would say bread and roses.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Bread
we
oil.
need bread,
Yeah.
but also roses. We're not just struggling for a baseline
Yeah.
livelihood here and survival. We're talking about thriving.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think I think it's an amazing thing, and I have grown just in addition to appreciating how much time and energy and skill goes into growing them. Just the baseline appreciation for the gotten in dipped my hand a little into the arranging side of things. That always
Hmm.
helps you
He's very
appreciate more.
talented, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh,
art and science, folks. Art and science.
arts and sciences. Hello.
Yeah, both together.
Greetings.
Love it. Love it. Love it. It's a good thing.
Well, do you all have any other lingering enjoyments of plants or engagements with plants? We didn't even talk about house plants
No,
as a thing.
so
Oh,
many
those
ways
are
we could
those are
go.
the winter garden, right? At
Ah,
least in
yes.
Kentucky, the
That's the
winter
plants that I
garden.
have to bring in that are unhappy all year until I take them back out and then they get happy again. I have those seasonal house plants. I don't have full time
Yeah.
house plants.
Snowbirds.
I have full
Yes,
time
there's
ones
ooh,
because
yeah.
yeah, snowbirds. Yeah. No, I have full
What'd you
time
say?
ones because I shock them too much when I bring them in and out.
If you just not use the taser, it would be.
Yeah. If
Right.
you quit reading them tales
They're
of
not
terror every night at
cooperating.
10:30.
How else do I take
Never
care of the
really
mealy
understood
bug
why you did
problem?
that. Oh, oh my.
I knew this conversation would be a good one today, but I had no idea it was going to be this
Oh,
good.
Well, we
so
want
good.
to,
Good
and we
topic.
want to hear from you guys.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we usually do a little wrap up, but we've covered way too much ground today, and I think we've all shared. I've learned things about each of you that I did not know, which is very fun
Yeah.
for me. And so we'd like to learn some things about you all that we don't know. It's a little bit bigger field out there, and also we don't really know many of you at all. So it's easy for you to share. Please get in contact with us. Let us know why you love this stuff. Let us know if you like this style of episode. Us pinning Alexis to a wall and asking her about her feelings, me leaning all the way in on smooth jazz NPR host voice. Uh, let us know if this is something that you'd like to hear more of. But for real, reach out. You can reach out to us at on Instagram at Hort Culture Podcast. You can DM us there. You can also email us. You can email any of us. I'm brett.wolf@uky.edu. And let us know what brings you joy. Why are you doing all this crazy stuff? There's all kinds of work and worrying about money and worrying about profitability and all that kind of stuff. But what about that initial joy, that thing that brought you to this crazy horticulture world in the first place? We would love to hear from you about that.
Yes.
With that, Alexis, take us home.
All right, awesome. Well, we hope that as we grow this podcast, you will grow with us. Thank you for joining us today. And we hope you get a little time to reflect on the joy that is horticulture. So thank you, and we'll see you next time.